بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم افتح علينا بحكمتك وانشر علينا برحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله في كل لمحة ونفس عدد ما وسعه علم الله. يا عليم علمنا من علمك ما ترضى به عنا ولا تؤاخذنا بما تعلمه منا. يا حليم خلقنا بخلق الحلم وحققنا بحقائق العلم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We're talking about verses 10 and 11. And inshallah we'll take a few minutes to complete that. وَجَائِزٌ عَلَيْهِ فِعْلُ مَا يُمْكِنُ أَوْ تَرْكُهُ فَلْتَعْلَمَا لِأَنَّهُ سُبْحَانَهُ فَرِيدُ فِي مُلْكِهِ يَفْعَلُ مَا يُرِيدُ. It is conceivable for God to do whatever is possible or leave it undone. Know this well. For God, glorified be He, is solitary in His dominion. He does whatever He wills. And among the issues that was raised regarding this aspect of theology is that the Mu'tazila believed, this sect of early Islam, that it was necessary for God that He do what is good. They called that as-salah. And if there were a situation in which a number of alternatives presented themselves, all of which were good, that He had to do the aslah. He had to do the best of those. Sunni theology rejected this position as confused and confounded. And it insisted that God is the creator of good and evil. And He does whatever He wills in creation. And He creates good for those who seek to acquire it. And He creates evil for those who are depraved and who want to do it. This is the nature of the test. There is no other creator. There is no independent principle of evil or of good. And one of the things that indicates that is that good and evil in creation change. And sometimes good dominates and sometimes evil dominates. So that indicates that they are not independent principles. That indicates that they are not uncreated. And it shows that they are created. They are under the power of God. So the creation of good and evil is among those things that are the prerogative of God. He creates this life in order to test us. And we talked about that to some length this morning, so we won't repeat everything that we said. But one of the things that we, I think, can conclude with is the fact that in the question of good and evil, one of the most important aspects of the question is that how do you respond to evil? And for many Christians and for some Jews, the issue of God's creating evil is very problematic because they understand that if God creates evil, then you have to accept it. You have to submit to it. And this is the antithesis of our position. In our position in Islam, we often talk about two categories. We talk about one category of perception, which we call sharia, which we call the outward prophetic law. And the outward prophetic law establishes reality as it is. It establishes the norms of people as they are. And it's very clear about what is good and needs to be done and what is evil and needs to be opposed. And then we have haqiqah. We have the ultimate reality, the inward prophetic truth of things as they are in and of themselves. In our belief, the religious communities of the past went astray and were often destroyed because they could no longer maintain the balance between haqiqah and sharia, between the outward prophetic law and between the inward prophetic truth. And these do not contradict each other, they go together. So when we look at good and evil, we have to also look at them in terms of the sharia, the outward prophetic law, and the inward cosmic truth. Okay, and this, inshallah, resolves a number of the problems that face Christian theologians and others. A lot of black theologians, for example, and this is one of the things that Dr. Jackson focuses on in his book on black suffering, Islam and the question of black suffering, is that if God willed the transatlantic slave trade to be, if that is part of his creation, then how can it be bad? And how can it be resisted? And for us, this is a very basic confusion between the domain of sharia, of the outward law, and the domain of haqiqah. In terms of the sharia, evil is evil, and it is not brooked, it is not tolerated, and it must be opposed. So here, the fact that we believe that evil in creation is created by God in his wisdom, his knowledge, his power, his justice, and his mercy, it doesn't mean that because this evil that we face was created by God, that we submit to it passively. On the contrary, we oppose it aggressively, or we oppose it actively. And this is the requirement of Sharia. And for this reason also, among the most important ethical imperatives of Islam is the concept of jihad, of moral struggle, and of mujahada, from the same root, which is moral vigilance. And jihad means that when you confront evil, you have to oppose it, and you have to do whatever you can to obliterate it. And jihad pertains to all walks of life. So jihad always has in it three elements. You have, first of all, an objective that is good. And then you have obstacles that lie in the way to that objective. And then you have the struggle that you or your community has to engage in order to overcome the obstacle and to attain the good. For this reason, for example, when the mother conceives and bears and delivers the child, and when she and her family raise that child from an infant to an adult, this is a type of jihad. It is a type of moral struggle. The good which is there is the child, the progeny, that we want to have the child, and we want the child to be well and to be healthy and to grow up into a good adult. So this is the objective, and it is very good. And the obstacles are all of those things that naturally and socially make that difficult to do. So the woman has to bear the child, she has to take care of her health, she has to eat properly, she also undergoes all the difficulties of the change of hormones and things like that, and then the delivery of the child is extremely difficult, and then the child must be nursed and must be attended for by her and by others until the child is able to grow and to become an adult. So that is the obstacle. Those are the obstacles. And the jihad, the moral struggle, is all of the exertion that she and that others with her, her husband and her family, do in order to have that child and to bring about that good. So when we see evil in the world, then the good is to eliminate that evil and to bring about justice and understanding and a good state of affairs. But that evil has to be opposed, and we have to marshal all of the wisdom that we have and the means that we have to remove that in a legitimate way, in a positive way. So we do not accept evil passively because of the fact that we believe that it was created. And things like the slave trade or the caste system or racism or genocide or many other types of evil that we can think of and that often come to our mind today as modern human beings, these are evils, categorical evils. And the fact that good may come out of it, that from 1448 black Africans are taken out of the Gambia River to Portugal and to Spain to work on sugar plantations, and then when the Americas are discovered, generations of blacks from 1448 until about 1835 are taken out by the millions and deprived of their families, their languages, their mothers. They're usually young people, by the way. And then they're taken to a foreign world where often they are completely deprived of everything they had before and treated in an inhumane and subhuman way. That the fact that great good may come out of this in the end does not justify that. And this was something that was wrong, that was morally abhorrent, and that we should oppose in our hearts today, just as if we had been there in that time, we should have done whatever we could to oppose it. But when we look at evil from the standpoint of haqiqah, of the ultimate reality, then we see that evil, no matter how terrible it may be, it only occurs by the will of God, and therefore there is wisdom in it. There must be wisdom in it, and we accept it in the sense that it is from God. This doesn't mean that we don't oppose it, but in our opposition to it, we are not filled with fanaticism or with hatred or with a sense that things have gone wrong. And even when Muslim Spain and Portugal were about to fall, many of the Muslims there who knew that this would be one of the greatest disasters in Islamic civilization, and they fought against it to the very end, they also accepted it as the decree of God, that if this is what you will, we will do the best we can to oppose it with our intention and with ourselves, but we will accept whatever your decree is. So this is the approach of haqiqah. And in terms of haqiqah, we know that evil is never absolute. And that that God is able to transform the course of evil into something that is good. Just as coal, when it is put under pressure and heat, for years and years, transforms from coal into a diamond. Or just as gold, when it is exposed to the fire, is purified of its dross. Okay, so this is the conclusion then of the discussion of what is possible regarding our Creator. Now we come to the last of the theological issues, and this is what is impossible with regard to God's due right. Again, we're using the language of pure intellect, in which things are essentially necessary or possible or impossible. So here he says in verse 12, وَضِدُّهَا مُمْتَنِعٌ ثُمَّ الْكَمَالِ لِلَّهِ وَالنَّقْصُ غَدَى لَهُ مُحَالٌ. So he says, the contraries of these attributes are impossible. Again, perfection belongs to God. Any deficiency for God has become impossible in your mind. Okay, so now we go through all of the attributes again, and anything that is contrary or the opposite of the necessary attributes of God is rejected as misconstrued and false, or logically impossible. Okay, and here we talk about opposites and we talk about contraries. We did that before. When we talked about pure reason, we indicated that pure reason loves opposites, that wherever it can find opposites, it can arrive at truth. It can arrive at big metaphysical insights. Opposites, we said, are those concepts or those realities that can never be conjoined. They can never come together. And they can never both be absent. That's the nature of the opposite. In Arabic we say, النقيضان لا يجتمعان ولا يرتفعان. The two opposites can never be conjoined, and they can never be mutually separate. So opposites are things like existence and non-existence, or pre-existence and temporality. And with regard to a body, things like being still and moving in one place, in one location. Okay, so these are opposites, and we can get a lot from them. The cup is either pre-existent or it's temporal. It can't be pre-existent because it changes, so therefore it's temporal. But it must be one or the other. It cannot be both pre-existent and temporal, existing after non-existence. It cannot be both existent and non-existent. It is one or the other. Either it is existent or it is non-existent. It cannot be both of those at the same time, and it cannot be neither one. It's got to be one of those. It's got to have one of those qualities. Those are opposites, just as this cup, as it is here in this place, is either still or it's moving. Contraries are those qualities which cannot be conjoined, but they can both be absent. So we say ad-diddan, and we use the word did for a contrary. We use the word naqid for an opposite. So the diddan la yajtami'an wa qad yaftariqan. The two contraries can never be conjoined, but they can both be absent. So, for example, white is the contrary of black. It's not the opposite of black. This garment is white. It could be black, and it could be part white and part black. But it can't be both black and white at the same time, in the same way. But it could also be neither white and neither black. It could be red, it could be blue, it could be polka dot, it could be striped, it could be many things. Okay? So the naqidan, you have the opposites and you have the contraries. And when we speak of what is impossible regarding the Creator, we're talking the language of pure reason. We mean that this is impossible for the sound intellect to affirm. It must deny these things. And here, all of the opposites and all of the contraries of God's necessary attributes are put to the side as inadequate descriptions of God, as imperfections and defects. And all of these contraries and opposites of God are reflections of temporality. They are reflections of the nature of temporal beings, of created things, be they angels, or be they human beings, or be they whatever they may be, that exist in space and time, that have existence as a gift after not having existence. So, the first attribute, the ontological attribute of God that we talked about days ago, is necessary existence. Therefore, non-existence is impossible. For God not to exist is not conceivable. And for any contraries, such as conceptions of imperfect existence, or partial existence, or deficient existence in any way, these are also impossible. His pre-existence is necessary in the intellect, necessary in pure reason and in revelation and experience as well, customary experience. So everything that is opposite or contrary to that is rejected. God pre-exists, therefore temporality is not conceivable with regard to God. He is not in time and space. He is not like things in time and place. He does not have a cause. And when we look at the world of cause and effect that is around us, it is not possible to imagine a being that does not have cause, but it is necessary to posit that being in pure intellect, and we do that. And we have that also in Revelation. He is al-awwalu wal-akhiru wal-zahiru wal-batin. He is the first and the last, the outward and the inward. And he has no beginning. He is the first without beginning. He is the last without end. His pre-existence, therefore, is necessary, and all contraries to that, such as interrupted existence, such as change in the nature of his existence, such as his existence coming to an end, all of this is rejected. And the opposite of pre-existence is temporality. So that is rejected with regard to God. His attribute is everlastingness, al-baqa. He who exists without cause, I am that I am, his existence cannot come to an end. His existence is not under cause and effect. His existence is not regulated by those elements or those factors that bring about change or that give richness or deficiency. None of that pertains to him. So he who is pre-existent is also everlasting. Those two go together in pure intellect and in revelation. God does not cease to be. God does not change. He is perfect in every way. His being is absolutely full. His being is absolutely actualized. It does not have degrees of greater or lesser. It is perfect. And it is the wonder of wonders. You are created to be perfect. You know, religion, the purpose of religion is to worship God. The purpose of our existence is to worship God, to know God, and to perfect ourselves, and to be the vicegerents of God on earth. But in the perfection of the self, which occurs in this world, and in the lives after this world, and in the next world, there is no end. You go higher and higher and higher, into an infinity of perfections upon perfections. God is dissimilar, utterly unlike created being. So therefore, all the opposites of that and all of the contraries of that are impossible. They are inconceivable. And this is something we've talked about a lot, because in speaking about dissimilarity, we usually talked about its opposites and its contraries. But as we said, God is not in time and space. God is not like anything in time and space. His necessary existence is infinitely more real. It is infinitely more manifest. It is also infinitely more hidden. Okay, so he is not in me, and he is not outside of me. Those categories, in, outside, near, far away, touching, not touching, up, down, below, above, these are only meaningful with regard to things that exist in time and place, things that are all created, things that are in the grip of God, in his power and his wisdom and his will and his knowledge. This is not the way God is. He is not transcendent, meaning that he is outside the world, and he is not immanent. He is not in the world. It's not either or, it's neither. And he is closer to you than your jugular vein. He is closer to you than yourself. And he has this one-on-one connection to you and to everything created. This is the glory and the grandeur of God. He is not like created things. He's not a physical entity. He is not a body. He is not made of elements. He does not move. He is not still. He is not physically near or physically far. He is not physically touching me or not touching me. Okay, none of that applies. This is really important. And God is not nature. God is not nature. This is one of the words that we use a lot in the modern age, especially in things like discourse about evolution. And we will say that nature caused this. Sometimes they will speak of evolution as if evolution were personified, as if it were a person. This is really important. You know, that what is nature? And as we said before, as the Greeks say, the ancient Greeks, that definition is the beginning of knowledge. We have to define terms. You know, that this is really important. So what is nature? We like to use nature today because of the fact that nature is originally, in the English language, a personification. It is a being, Mother Nature, Mother Earth. And when we talk about the wonders of creation, how can we ascribe those to chance or to random? That's not possible. But so it's much more comfortable for us to use the term nature. But nature requires a definition. Is there actually such a thing as nature? And if there is nature necessary or possible or impossible? Is nature caused or uncaused? Is nature pre-existent? Is nature everlasting? Is nature dissimilar to all things in creation? Is nature self-sufficient? Is nature one? Or are there different natures? Is nature living? Does it have infinite knowledge? Does it have will? Did it select these things? Does it have power? Does it hear? Does it see? Does it speak? Is it God? What is nature? And this is why the use of the word nature is really a type of deception. Because we should be speaking about God. We should be speaking about the One. We should be speaking about the Creator. And we should be glorifying Him in all these amazing things we study. But instead we just use this word which we do not define. So it's like a sleight of hand. It's like a card trick. Or you might say it's like X in algebra or other forms of mathematics. It's the unknown, but it needs definition. And the same thing, if we speak about evolution, it's like, you know, are you talking about an idea? Or are you talking about a person? Are you talking about God? What are you talking about? You've got to define it. So God is not nature, and He is not like anything in nature. He is utterly dissimilar. He does not have taste. He does not have smell. He does not have color. You know, He is not a body. He is not like anything that you know. And our creed always insists on the absolute otherness of God, who is the other. He is the other, unlike anything in creation. And this is also the prophetic belief of the Bible and of the legacy of all of the prophets of the past. God is self-sufficient. Therefore, all opposites and all contraries to that are unacceptable, inconceivable, and in the language of pure intellect, impossible. God has no need. And as we said before when we talked about that, he doesn't need a locus. This cane has a locus, which is the space that it occupies. It has to have that. And then it's got to have 6 directions: above, below, right, left, front, and back. None of that applies to God. He is not situated. He is not in a place. He doesn't have a makan. The makan is the place where this locus is located. So none of that pertains to him. He is utterly without need. In fact, Socrates, we'll speak about him inshallah tomorrow perhaps. We hope to get to the prophets, not tomorrow, the day after that. We want to talk a little bit about people like Zoroaster and Socrates, Lao Tzu and Buddha and others, were they prophets or not. But Socrates is an amazing man. And he said that I conceive of the most fundamental quality of God, that he has utterly no need. He has no need whatsoever. This is his capital crime. This is why Socrates was condemned to death, because he rejected the gods of Athens. And he regarded his work as the work of God. We'll talk about that when we talk about him tomorrow or the day after that, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. But God is utterly without need. No need of place or of situation, no need of instruments, no need of anything that we can imagine, of mechanisms. And he fills the world with angels. Angels are created from light. Angels are amazing beings. Inshallah, we hope to speak about them towards the end. I hope we have at least 3 more classes. And, but angels fill the world, and angels do the bidding of God. They have very fundamental roles that they play. But God has no need of angels. God has no need of prophets. God has no need of messengers. God has no need of books or of language or of anything. He is perfect and he is self-sufficient in himself. Everything that is created is in need of him. Everything that is created is dependent upon him in every moment. And God is one. So therefore, we reject all plurality, all multiplicity in God. He's not made of elements. He's not made up of parts. He is utterly one in himself. And there is no other God like him. There is no other being in creation that is also pre-existent, that is also everlasting, that is also necessary, that is also dissimilar, self-sufficient, and one, living with necessary life, will, power, hearing, seeing, and speech. Okay? God is one. And God is powerful because of this oneness. And then we come to life. So God's life is necessary, and all contraries and opposites of that we consciously reject. God is not dead, subhanallah ta'ala, nor could he ever die. This, to say, as Nietzsche said in the last century, that God is dead, shows the fact that he never knew what to believe about God in the first place. And usually those who are the most antagonistic in their atheism or in their agnosticism are people who have a very, very pedestrian view of God to begin with. And if you look at a lot of the atheist literature today, even people like Hawkins and others, they cannot imagine any other dimension to reality than material existence. They do not imagine necessary being or possible being or impossible being. They don't think in these terms at all. For them, reality is uniform and very simple. It is just the things that we can perceive by our senses. There cannot be anything beyond that. And that is absurd. That is essentially a type of insanity. It is a block to thought, a block to thinking. So God has the quality of life, and all of the contraries and all of the opposites of that are impossible. He does not die, he does not sleep, he does not lose consciousness. His life is not lesser or greater, it is absolute and pure. It is pure being. And he's not a force, he's not an energy, he is not a custom in creation. He is a personal God, a living God, who knows you and who cares about you. And God cares about you, God loves you much more than you love God. As the Prophet says in the authentic hadith, God says that if my servant approaches me with walking, I come to him like one running. If he comes to me like one hastening, I come to him like one running. If he comes to me the length of a handspan, I come to him the length of an arm span, and so forth. God wants us to come to him. Okay? Knowledge is necessary. All of its contraries are impossible. God does not forget. God does not make mistakes. God does not guess. God does not rethink. God does not learn. This is why we say when we speak of the knowledge of God that it has one executive or efficient pre-existent relation, that he knows all things. All things are disclosed to him before the creation of the heavens and the earth. All necessity, all possibility, all impossibility. God has will, and all of the contraries to that are impossible and rejected. All the opposites and all the contraries. So therefore, there is no other creative will, and there is no place for another creative will. His will relates to all things possible, and in those things possible, he selects those ones that will be, and he selects out of existence all the infinite alternatives to them that will not be. And God creates evil and God creates good. There cannot be another independent creator who creates evil instead of God. Satan is God's creation, and Satan plays a role in the test of human beings, but Satan is not a God. And Satan does not create evil. Satan acquires evil, and Satan insinuates evil to us. And he is real, he exists. But he is not a God. He is not a God of evil. There is no God of evil and God of good. Also, we believe that causation is by God himself, and we talked about that to some length. And therefore, in our creed, the causation that appears to take place in the world, like the fire burning the wood, or the water quenching thirst, or mechanistic cause, these are all apparent causes, and they are all customary causes. We see them happen, we expect them to happen. We do not expect there to be exceptions to them, but they do not happen independently. They are always in the grip of God's complete control. So if Abraham is thrown into the fire, or certain saints of the children of Israel after that, God can protect them from the fire. And he can say to the fire, be cool and be safe for Abraham. Okay, this is not impossible, and this is not contrary to reason. This is the nature of possibility, of the infinite possibilities of possibility. But God does not usually will that to be the case. He wills the fire to burn, he makes it burn. So the belief in natural causation as independent causation that must happen if conditions are right, for us that is disbelief. And we have to be really careful about that. To believe that there's actual natural causation that works independently of God on its own, that can have no exceptions, this for us is disbelief. And even to believe in mechanistic cause is for us disbelief. Mechanistic cause is, we call that in Arabic al-illa or al-ta'lil. And mechanistic cause is, for example, if I have a ring on my finger and I move my finger, the ring has to move with it. Isn't that true? It has to. No, it doesn't have to. God wills it to work that way. Mechanistic causation, for example, in machines is that, when the cogs of the machine mesh, and if there is sufficient strength, and if there's nothing blocking it, it's got to move. Just like the gears in your car. Okay, those are mechanistic causes, but they too are completely under the will and the power of God. And in modern physics, it is said that if the atoms should happen to align properly, I could put my hand through the glass. And if the atoms should happen to align in a certain way, which they don't usually do, then I could move my finger and the ring would not move. The finger would move through the ring. So modern science also helps us in understanding that. Everything happens by the will of God. God is not constrained, and nothing happens in his creation that he did not will. And horrible things happen in his creation, in this world. In this world of tests and of tribulations, in this world of disappointments. That's where we are. Things happen that are so evil here that we cannot speak of them. And there are human beings that acquire those things of their own intention and will, and who darken their soul, and who are damned because of that, and who turn their backs on their own nature. And we know lots of stories in our time about things like that. Okay, but this is also the will of God, and he is the creator of the fire. And he is the Lord of the day of judgment. And he will set things right, and he will reward those who deserve to be rewarded, and he will punish those who deserve to be punished. This is what we believe, and this is the prophetic teaching. God has power. All of the opposites and all of the contraries of that are impossible. So he does not become sick, he does not become weak, he does not sleep, he does not lose consciousness. Nothing happens because of independent agents that are in creation. God is alone, and he is the one who makes things happen. As we said before, we believe that God creates us and he sustains us in creation from moment to moment. This is the effect of power. Power brings you into existence, and power maintains you in existence from moment to moment. If God willed, then we would simply cease to exist. We would go back to non-existence immediately, just as we came out of it. God has hearing and seeing, and the contraries and opposites of this are also impossible, and they are not accepted. God perceives all things that exist in a perfect way, and we call that hearing and seeing. He hears sounds, he hears colors, he hears bodies, he hears movements, he hears all things. The most beautiful of the things that he hears are his own attributes, his essence, and his names. Anything contrary to that, not perceiving, not seeing, not hearing, blindness, dimness, partial perception, imperfect perception of what is, illusion, these are all impossible. And finally, God has the attribute of uncreated speech. And so this speech relates perfectly to all things that he knows. And any contraries or opposites of that, we reject as not conceivable, as inconceivable, impossible, not acceptable. And God's speech reveals perfectly his infinite knowledge. And God's speech is truthful and authentic and exact. So there are no mistakes in it, there are no errors, there are no flaws in it, there is no untruth in it. It reveals reality as it truly is. Okay, and these are the impossibilities of God. So we learn what is necessary, and then with that you have to also think about what would be the contrary or the opposite of that. You affirm what is necessary, and you reject what is impossible. Okay, and then regarding the possible, this is the will of God. He does in the world whatever He wills. So, inshallah, we will start next time that we meet with the prophets. We have 15 minutes now, and I think because we've talked about a great deal and you've had lots of questions, it's probably better that we just stop right here and entertain questions that you have. And then, inshallah, when we meet again on Monday, we will begin with the prophets, which is a great discussion, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. God is outside of time and space, but speaking of the fact that it is possible for God to do anything, is there a component of a process of doing to Allah's acts, whether relating to creation or not, which to the human understanding would require or take time? Very good question. A very good question. But he says, be, and it is. And he does not create through process. And he does not create through thought or through mechanisms or anything like that. And in our existence right now, in this moment, it is always be, and it is. Be, and it is. Be, and it is. Here you are sitting there, this moment, the next moment, the next moment, and all of this is the direct intervention of the power of God, according to the will of God, according to the knowledge of God. That's my understanding of that question. And God creates space and time, and He works perfectly in space and time, and He is closer to each thing in space and time than that thing itself. But He is not delimited, and He is not held to process. Could you elucidate the specific difference between opposite and contrary? I understand that neither of them can be conjoined, but what makes contrary unique from opposites? As we said, in the case of opposites, it is either or. So opposites are, there are just two of them. And in anything that we conceive of or that we apply the opposites to, either one of them must be, and if it is, the other one is excluded. And if the other one is excluded, then the other one occurs. So existence and non-existence are opposites. The glass exists, therefore its non-existence is negated. It has the possibility of existence and non-existence, therefore it belongs to the realm of temporal being. In the case of contraries, the contraries cannot both be attributes of a thing at the same time and in the same way, but both of them can be excluded, and you can have other attributes instead. As we said, black and white are contraries. Day and night are contraries. They're not opposites. Between day and night, you have dawn, you have the intensification of the light of dawn, you have sunrise, then you have twilight, you have then the coming of night gradually, and so forth. Okay? In the Quran, Allah says that He guides only whom He wills. He says He guides whom He wills. Could you explain how choice works with this? The guidance of God and the misguidance of God are prerogatives of His Lordship. And this pertains to the question of human beings and the acquisition of actions. So we are given the ability to acquire our deeds. We can acquire good deeds, we can acquire bad deeds. We ask God to help us on the path. We ask Him to guide us on the path. We approach Him by things that make Him love us and that bring Him close to us. Okay, so God is the guide. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no strength to avoid evil. There is no power to avoid evil. And there is no strength to do good except through God. Okay, He is the guide. And this we accept. And in His guidance, He also gives you tawfiq. He gives you the success to acquire what is good and to be guided. God guides and He misguides. His guidance we call tafaddul. We call it bounty and mercy, and misguidance we call justice. And the people who are misguided, they also earn that. How this goes together is the secret of destiny. Is belief that medication itself cures a type of mechanistic cause. When we say that medicine cures, or we say that the water quenches my thirst, or we say that the teacher educated me and gave me knowledge, this is called majaz. It is called a metaphor. And we call it a special type of metaphor, majaz mursal. It is it's a broad type of metaphor, and it's perfectly legitimate. You're allowed to say that the medicine cured you, the remedy helped you. You're allowed to say that the doctor cured you. You're allowed to say that the teacher taught me. In reality, the medicine is a medium by which God cured you. And in reality, the teacher is a medium by which God had you taught. Okay, but medicine as such if you believed in cause and effect, that would be called a natural cause. You have two types of causation, and we don't believe that either of them is literally true. Natural causation is like the fire burning, or the medicine curing, or the water quenching thirst. And natural causation always requires a certain alignment of conditions. And mechanistic cause doesn't have that attribute. Mechanistic cause is like, the machine, or like the ring on the finger, or things of that nature. Okay? But we believe that medicine cures by the will of God, and not by a property that it has independent of the will of God. And the study of medicine is one of the great sciences. And to be able to cure people and to keep people healthy is extremely important. And we use remedies in that. And we talk about the way that you live in your body, or whether you're outside of your body, and how you relate to your nervous system and listening to your nervous system. All of that is perfectly valid. The fact that we believe that all of it is created by God doesn't mean that we negate the fact, that those things work, that they're actual realities that are there. So if you take poison, you expect to die, right? This is the custom of God. God put in the poison these properties that would do that. And, to believe that I could eat the poison, or I could drink the poison, and my life would continue as it was before, this is absurd, and this is a very poor courtesy with God. You expect the customary world to work the way that it does. That's the way we study it. But the cause and effect in it are apparent, and they're not real. They are under the hand of God and the determination of God. If a person intends to do evil, and insists to inquire it, but God, from His wisdom, does not allow it to happen, is that not as an encroachment on His free will? On the day that Umar ibn al-Khattab became a Muslim, he goes out with his sword, and he intends to bring an end to what he sees as the chaos in Quraysh because of this Prophet ﷺ, who is calling people to the oneness of God which is leading to the breakup of families. It's leading to disharmony in the tribe. It's also threatening the status of Mecca itself. So Umar went out with the strongest intention to do that. But Umar was a good person. Umar was a sincere person. And Umar was a person that had a destiny that is second to none other than Abu Bakr in history. So in Umar, there is a goodness that he does not even know. He was a powerful person. He was a strong person. He was very intelligent. And he goes out with the will to do that. And then he encounters the man from Bani Zuhra, right, who tells him that, where are you going, Umar? Why do you have your sword on? And Bani Zuhra are allies of the Prophet ﷺ. And he says, I'm going to the Prophet, going to kill him. And he said, shouldn't you take care of your own family first? What about your sister Fatima? That was her name, Fatima. And so then, oh, she's a Muslim, and then he goes to her, and as he approaches her house, he hears her and her husband reciting the Quran. And then he comes in, but he hears it, and it's very beautiful. And then he comes in and he attacks her husband, and the teacher goes back in the back, he leaves the room, and then Umar, in fighting with her husband, he strikes his sister by mistake. And she begins to bleed. And this changes him completely. Because again, she is his sister after all. And he's affected by that. And that brings out something really good in his nature. And somehow he transforms. So Allah, this is the guidance of God. This is the miracle of God. And this is an amazing thing. And this is why no matter how good you may become, how did we get here? I could have died when I was 16 years old, in a horrible car accident in front of my grandfather's house. And I was drunk and I was wrong. And I was not good at that time. Where would I have been? And yet God redeemed me. He brought me back. And then 6 years later, after many changes, he brings me to this religion. And I was able to accept it. What did I do to deserve that? Nothing. Nothing I know of. But God willed to bring out something in me that I didn't even know was there. I didn't even know it was possible to believe at that time. So the same thing with Umar, that this then transforms him. And then when he says, then let me hear this book. And his sister says, you've got to do ghusl. So he does that. He's already submitting. And then she recites to him and he believes. Just like that. He's transformed. And then he goes to the Prophet wearing his sword. And he comes to the Dar al-Arqam in Mecca, that is by where today you have As-Safa, where we go in the Umrah. And they come and they open the latch to the little window in the door, and they see Umar with his sword, and they're frightened. He's big. He's strong. He's got the strength of 30 men. He's like that. He's a powerful person. And then Hamza says that if he's come with a good intention, we'll let him in. And if he's come with a bad intention, we'll kill him with his own sword. Hamza also has the ability to do that. Hamza is as strong as Umar. You have these powerful people in Quraysh, like Khalid ibn al-Walid. Oh, what an incredible human being he was. And then the Prophet comes in. Then Umar comes in. The Prophet comes up to him. He greets him. He embraces him. And Umar is just like that. He comes into Islam, and the next thing he does, he goes out to Abu Jahl, knocks on his door, and Abu Jahl opens it, and he's so happy, and Umar says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. And Abu Jahl is terrified, and he shuts the door. It's like, what are we going to do now? So God does what he wills. If you look at Malcolm X, I became a Muslim through Malcolm X. Malcolm X describes himself in his life before Islam as Satan. And the things that he did, a'udhu billah. And yet, the last 50 years of his life, he's transformed. His voice changes, he makes pilgrimage, no more racism, he wants to bring whites and blacks together. He becomes a totally different person. And this is because he comes into the Sunnah. He comes into the deen of Islam. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. So all of this is, and these are the secrets of God. And again, if we talk about good and evil, we've said before that the basic creed that we study, this is the beginning, it's not the end, but the basic creed, it's like a roadmap. And it is an accurate roadmap. You have to hold to it, even though you don't necessarily understand the secrets of good and evil and the acquisition of good and evil and things like that. But you have to hold to that. Your spiritual progress depends on that. But as we go down that road and as we grow, then you begin to learn other things. And you begin to have the means by which you can explain what's happening. Are we out of time? Allahu Akbar. Concerning causation. Okay, these are really good questions. I'm really impressed, and I'm going to keep your questions because, inshallah, if Allah gives me the ability to write this, and I have the intention to do that, then these questions will be very valuable, because the questions that you have are the questions that lots of other readers are going to have as well. And we ask Allah to give us understanding, and we ask Him, to put the truth in our hearts and to let us follow it. اللهم وفقنا لما تحبه وترضى وجعلنا من عبيدك السعداء وأمتنا على كلمة الهدى علمنا ما ينفعنا ووفقنا للعمل بما علمتنا به واجعل ما نحن فيه خالصا مخلصا لوجهك الكريم يا رب العالمين اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا بعده تفرقا معصوما لا شقيا منا ولا محروما آمين 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 يا رب العالمين. We'll see you tomorrow. Inshallah, we go to the panorama. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. And then inshallah Monday we get back to the classes bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. And I hope that I'll be able to do justice to this aqidah. And inshallah, I think we need probably 3 more classes to finish it. Bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. Wassalamu alaikum.